Hey, movie fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. This is episode 213. So, Josh and I talk about many a things on this podcast, mostly comic book and movie-related news, and we delve very specifically into certain fandoms like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, horror. There is one fandom, though, that Josh and I have both been a part of for a good chunk of our lives that we don't advertise or don't talk about as much. Well, I don't talk about or advertise as much. But even then, this fandom is not one that Josh speaks of as often, but is probably one of his most diehard franchises. But it's also secretly one of my diehard franchises, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So with the Mutant Mayhem trailer finally dropping and surprising everyone not named Josh, we were just like, you know what? We have not actually spent quality time talking about the Turtles. And boy, guys, if you haven't talked to us before, this is a topic that we can talk about for a very long time. So I know sometimes we tell the same stories over and over again. I guarantee you there's going to be some new stuff that you've never heard from Josh and I when it comes to this topic. So I'm kind of excited to delve into some of the stories, our history with the Turtles, our favorite things with the franchise, the goods and the bads and everything in between. But Josh, you ready for some cowabunga-ing tonight?
Cowabunga-ing?
Hey, it's not as weird as when Splinter says it.
That's unfortunately fair.
Yeah,
dude, I'm always for this. I'm always for talking Ninja Turtles. And I know, I guess I bring it up from time to time, but I don't think it's not really, like you said, one of those franchises you talk about a whole lot. So I'm pretty excited about it. But yeah, how are you, buddy? It's been a week.
Yeah,
week and a half.
We both have been through the ringer. Josh a little bit more than I have, but
yeah.
I still have cabin fever because I still don't have a car back yet. Still,
Woo!
I hope to get it back by the time this episode airs. It's just so frustrating and annoying. But yeah, I did the news last week. Since I've been at home, I've been working from home, but I've also been watching a lot of stuff, because I've realized I was kind of falling behind on my forecast of where I should be in terms of watching stuff, because only I care about how many projects and movies I watched in a given year, and I understand that. But I watched Hot Shots Part 2.
Yeah.
So much better.
Yeah! Woo!
So much better than the first one. Because I'm not going to lie, the first one I kind of thought was just whatever. But Hot Shots Part 2 was so good. There's one part in particular that I actually had to pause it because I was dying laughing so hard. There's the scene where they're talking to one of the main characters and she's like, "Who's that?" "Oh, she's the female love interest. And the other guy? He's an extra." And I'm just like, the fact that you just openly acknowledge the extra right to the camera's face is just wonderful.
Art Deuce is so good. Easily one of my favorite comedies of all time.
It's so funny. And then on the flip side, I watched a comedy that severely disappointed me. A movie called Idiocracy, which I hear a lot about in film circles of just wow, it was one of those comedies that was ahead of its time and predicted the future of a guy with average intelligence in our time period accidentally gets sent to the future where everyone's a bunch of morons. And I'm going, that could be really entertaining and interesting. It's not as clever as the movie thinks it is. It's the same guy that did Office Space. So, if you enjoy the Office Space style of humor, this might work. I'm just going, it's not as ahead of its time as people like to give it credit for. I'm just and not that great. Watched Fanboys, which is really, really funny and will only really be funny if you're a Star Wars fan or a geek fan in general. But I think they do enough of a loving homage to Star Wars. I will say it has some tonal issues because the whole premise of the movie is it's 1999 and this group of friends are trying to break into Skywalker Ranch to see an early version of Phantom Menace before the movie comes out because their friend is dying of cancer and they want him to see the movie before he dies.
Oh no.
Yeah, so in one scene they'll be just farting around and creating a mob with Star Trek fans, and then the next scene they're talking about, oh yeah, our friend is dying of cancer. And I'm just going, when they first introduced that plot at the beginning of the movie, I'm going, well, that has to be a joke because you handled that with the least amount of subtlety possible. No, but no, that's like it's actually the story motivator. I'm going, oh no. But there's a whole bunch of famous people in it. It's funny. You got like Kristen Bell. You've got your boy How to Train Your Dragon, Jay Baruchel in it as the main geeky guy. The guy that would be the best part about Fantastic Beasts. What's his name? The Muggle character.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I forget what it's an early role for him.
They try to not make important, but somehow becomes incredibly important.
Yeah, because they realized people weren't really attaching to Newt all that much. William Shatner's in it as the mole in Skywalker Ranch, which is really, really funny. Then there's some stuff that really has not aged well that I'm just going, oh, this is a thing. I don't like where this is going. It was funny for a little bit. It's one of those like very dated 2000s movies that was like, I've seen it once. It was okay. I also finally watched The Haunting with Owen Wilson.
Oh yay.
God, this movie's so boring. Like, I know people bag on PG-13 horror, and I still think you could do PG-13 horror well, like Lights Out or Insidious.
Oh, yeah.
This movie's just boring. Nothing happens. It's just boring. They're just like, look how spooky this house is. It's really not that spooky. It's well lit and has interesting architecture, but it's not like a creepy house. Like, this is supposed to be the same source material that gave us The Haunting of Hill House. So it was cool being like, we have a Theo, we have a Nell. Okay. There's no real connection here to Haunting of Hill House as much as I was kind of hoping for. But it was more than anything, just wasn't scary. It's just boring. Really dull. Even Owen Wilson, being Owen Wilson, couldn't save it. And then lastly, Creed 3. I'm trying to keep it. I'll keep it to a minimum here because I don't want to spoil anything for Josh. But my full review is up. Dropped it when it came out. It's a good movie. It's a good directorial debut for Michael B. Jordan. He, for the first time in the franchise, I think, takes some risks. He tries some new things, especially with how the fights are presented. I don't know if they always worked for me, but by and large, it's a good movie. And no, Josh, is not as much of a Warrior ripoff as we were kind of making fun of it. It starts that way, but once the story gets going, it's not Warrior. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good movie. Yeah.
Well, and I think Creed was not Creed, Michael B. Jordan is very aware of what kind of space he's in when making a Creed movie, especially without Rocky. Hearing him say in interviews, the only interviews I've allowed myself to watch are like the ones of him saying that there's a lot of anime references and stuff like that.
Very much so. Very much so. You'll be able to tell.
Yeah, which I'll be interested to see if that, at least from my personal standpoint, if that ends up adding or subtracting. I don't know. We'll see. I have been very busy for personal reasons, so I have not gotten to watch a whole lot. I am an episode behind on Last of Us. I just watched the first episode of season 3 of Mandalorian today. It's crazy. I say that I've been so busy that I haven't had time to watch anything, but I'm like knee deep in a watch through of Adventure Time, which is something I've always wanted to watch. I've never seen it. And then I also read the first 3 Percy Jackson books this past couple weeks. And then I just started. Okay. So these new canon Star Wars books can be hit or miss, but
yes,
the one I'm starting right now, which is so far, I'm like 4 or 5 chapters in. Currently, one of my favorite Star Wars books I've ever read.
Which one is it?
It's Light of Jedi. It's a High Republic book. So It takes place like right during that time when the galaxy's actually at peace and actually like there's not a lot of infighting and stuff like that. It literally opens with a giant passenger ship colliding with something. It's not clear what it is, but colliding with something in a hyperspace lane and explodes the ship and and so all these bits and pieces of the ship are entering into a system at light speed. So as soon as it like hits something, it atomizes it right away. It's been like an intense like 4 or 5 chapters already, and it's super cool. I'm intrigued to see where we go with certain things, but like just like you, because you know me, I'm a very much like a visual like thinker. So like reading all this stuff was very like, oh, I would love to see this on a screen. Like, gosh, like it's like that scene from oh geez,
Last Jedi?
Last Jedi? Yeah, Last Jedi. Yeah, it's like that scene, the light speed scene.
Yeah, the
like,
holdo
towards the
scene.
end, but like on a plant, yeah, but on a system wide like scale, which is just horrifying to think about. But yeah, anyway, I've been doing way more reading than I am watching these days, but that's just because I have more time and I can do it when I'm laying down. I don't know. Anyway.
Our first news topic of the day is honestly something that I'm just happy. One, because I think it looks cool, but two, it feels like validation for Josh just because he is like the only person, and we have the receipts for it, the only person I know that was talking about this movie at the beginning of the year as one of their anticipated movies. Everyone else, I think to their credit, more or less just didn't know the movie was coming, because unless you're in the Turtles fandom, I don't think they've done a big job of like advertising it super well. But Josh has been super high on this movie for a while, and then we get some little snippets here, and we get the first trailer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. And I gotta be honest, to me it's perfect, and because it's a new installment of a beloved franchise, people are already on the fence about just about everything. Some people hate that the teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are young in this. Some people hate how April O'Neil looks in this. Some people hate that Splinter has a Jerry curl, which I'm just going.
Yeah, dude.
Okay, I'll be honest. I don't have any issues with the design. But Splinter does look a little weird to me. I'm not gonna lie. I was okay with it. I, for some reason, thought that this movie was set in the 90s, to which I'd be okay then if Splinter had a Jerry curl if this was in the 90s. Still a little dated, but whatever. Until one of the thugs makes a Shrek reference. I'm going, well, never mind then. It can't be the 90s. We just have a weird-looking Splinter.
Yeah.
But besides that, I really, really dug this trailer. I thought this is something totally different than what we've gotten before with the Turtles, but yet it still feels very familiar. It feels like I didn't watch this incarnation of the Turtles, but it felt like the most recent version that was on Nickelodeon. I think it was like, what, Rise of the Turtles or Turtles Rise, something like that. While being a bit like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, while never copying that art style. It was clearly inspired by it, but never copying it outright. I know people have already made a big deal about it. I personally like that they're teenagers here and they're dumb, inexperienced kids that almost kill each other with shurikens. I think that's perfect. It also leads to growth. I think it's more interesting if we grow up with these turtles as opposed to meeting them when they're 17 or 18, because we almost always meet them when they're like just about to be adults, because then we can rationalize how they're so good at fighting. I'm going, they're turtles. Do we need to apply rational thought here? And that's my big thing, is people try to apply rational thought to this trailer. I'm going, stop it.
Yes.
These are teenage mutant ninja turtles. Their arch enemy is named Shredder and Krang. Not Kang. Krang. Jonathan Majors on the mind. Krang. They have fought dinosaurs, mousers. They've been to other planets. They've visited multiverse versions of themselves. I don't think we should care about the minutia of, is this realistic? Like, guys, This was never intended to be realistic. But Josh, as a fellow diehard Turtles fan and someone that has been on board with this since before it was popular, hipster Turtle Josh, what do you think of this trailer?
Which, ironically, I am dressed, unironically dressed as a hipster today with the beanie and the glasses and everything. I have been on board with this since the beginning, and mostly, oddly enough, because Seth Rogen is producing and writing it and all that. Like, I think a lot of people still see him as, this is like such like, Seth Rogen behind the scenes has been going through a Robert Pattinson-esque like arc. Like, him and his production company did, a good portion of Invincible, did a good portion of The Boys, did like his whole series that he did where he plays two different people, one from Modern Times, one who
American Pickle
wakes up from a pickle brine. Like, he is, to me, really, really shown that he knows what to do with serious content. Gosh, this trailer shows it. Gosh, I love this trailer. I love that we're like, hey, they're teenagers. Okay, cool. So 14, 15, maybe 15. I don't think we're going that old. I think we're like 13 and 14 at this point. I love that. I think that is something that has been sorely missed. Some of the comments that I've been seeing are like, oh man, I love that they've got teenagers to voice the Teenage Turtles like they did in the 90s. Guys, they were not voiced in the 90s. They were not voiced by teenagers. I would argue that this is probably the first time that we've had actual teenagers voicing the Turtles. Now, obviously, there's probably some big nerds who have glasses on some YouTube channels that will tell me otherwise, but like, to me, I love this. I love that they act like teenagers. I love that at no point was I like, oh, I don't know who these people are. Like, no, instantly. Another complaint I've seen is people like, well, Donnie's voice and Mikey's voice should be switched. I'm like, that does not matter. You're typecasting a voice
from like point. What, a line of dialogue each?
Yeah, exactly. Which is like, I'm so excited for Donnie to have an actual personality that's not just tech boy. Like, are you kidding me? Like, he seems like, I think I need to look into it, but I'm pretty sure that's the same kid that did Darwin in the Amazing Adventures of Gumball. And if you have not watched that show, you're actually missing out. It's pretty good. But like, I just love that they're giving Donnie an actual personality. And I love that Mike, I just love that they're like actual characters. They're not just like archetype after archetype after archetype after archetype. It's like they're fully fleshed out, like almost, I like characters. I was going to say human beings, but that's not the case. I've seen the pushback on April's design. First of all, shame on you. Second of all,
in the comics,
you can sit here and be
in the comics.
I was going to go there.
Yep.
I like, it's one of those like, and I'm going to kind of call out 3C a little bit. Because he was like, I had a big issue with it. I didn't know what they were doing until I saw the comics. And I was like, I hear you. Like, you're used to seeing one thing, and then you have to find a justification for it, and just being like, well, in the original comics, she was a woman of color. So yeah, cool. But at the same time, like, that shouldn't matter. Like, it is April's race is literally the least of my worries of any of this. It does not define her as a character. And to me, it actually makes it more believable and interesting. That is such a small detail. I care
more if she has the red hair than what color her skin is.
Which is like so easy to do. Yeah.
Which, people seemingly gave a pass to Megan Fox for not having red hair, but we'll jump on this April. Although, to be fair, I did hear a lot of people criticizing Megan Fox's April, and rightly so, because her April O'Neil sucked, as did Stephen Amell's Casey Jones, which is one of the worst casting choices ever. We'll talk about it in a discussion, I'm sure. I will say, did miss seeing Casey Jones in this trailer, but then again, I don't think Casey's going to be in this movie at all. I think they're going to save. I'm okay with that. I think they saved Casey and Shredder for the sequel. I don't think Shredder is going to be in this at all, except for most likely a post-credit scene because
He's from everything that it sounds like, at least from a lot of like the descriptions of what the movie's going to be about and stuff like that, it sounds like Shredder is the one pulling, like him and Baxter Stockman. They are the ones in the background. Baxter Stockman obviously.
See, I think it's Stockman and Kristen Wiig's Utron.
Well, I mean, I know they are cast is the thing. So I know that they will be the visual representation of our villains in this movie, but I will not be surprised if it's Shredder in the background pulling the strings. I am so excited for all of these different mutants that we get to dive into. And we're actually going, I love that Seth was like, I could see it like, Nick is like, hey, Seth, you want to write us a TMNT movie? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go like deep. We're gonna go head first into the weirdest stuff that TMNT does, which is all the mutant stuff, which is also weirdly enough the most interesting stuff that they do as well. So like, I'm just excited. I love how Bebop and Rocksteady look. I saw a couple of people complain about how they look so pudgy and they're not big and like
they're
the dog.
A freaking warthog.
Yeah, and also they both fill up that room. So like it would make it I can understand why people were like, oh, they look so short. Like so like
they're short to me, they're short because they're super close to the camera. That's why they're short. You bring up Rocksteady and Bebop. I think now it's as good of a time as any to bring up how spectacularly cast this movie seems to be. You have Bebop and Rocksteady, Seth Rogen once again calling dibs on any character that it needs to be voicing a warthog because this is his third warthog now.
But also, like, he's the perfect voice really for it. So
he and John Cena are Rocksteady and Bebop. I'm going, okay. If anybody can beat, as much as I don't like the Michael Bay movies, his incarnation of Rocksteady and Bebop, which I thought were one of the highlights of Out of the Shadows. Absolutely. Props to Sheamus. I'm kind of sad we don't see Sheamus in more movies, but at least he passed the baton to another wrestler. You have Giancarlo Esposito, Grand Moff Gideon as Baxter Stockman going, oh, yes, please. And Jackie freaking Chan as Splinter. And, you know, unlike my beloved Kung Fu Panda, I think they will actually utilize Jackie Chan as a voice actor instead of, you know, just giving him 2 lines per movie and calling it a day, so just so he could be on the poster. I cannot wait for this movie. I'm with you. I think it's cool that we're just immediately jumping into mutants, because a lot of turtle stuff that I've seen seems to think we want to go realistic first and then jump into the weirder stuff later. Dude, again, your franchise is called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and you want to start realistic first?
My gosh,
we almost always start with like Baxter Stockman and Shredder, and then eventually get to the Utroms and everything else, and with Krang. I'm just like
complaining right now about Mikey having braces is hilarious to me. Like, guys, it's okay. Like, I don't understand why that's a problem. Like, oh, well, what, they go to the dentist? I'm like, or just, you know, Donnie figured it out. I don't know.
Also,
like,
you know,
what do you...
And no one's ever asked the question of where do they get the money to order pizza every single day?
Yes! Oh my gosh.
Guys, it's turtles. Throw logic out the window, and that's okay every once in a while. And that's coming from me, who is, albeit very much a stickler for verisimilitude, as we'll call it. I just think this trailer is fantastic. I think Josh is vindicated right now and just going, okay, you had this on your hype list from the get-go. I more just completely forgot that it was coming out this year, but it has rekindled a love of turtles that every time there's a new incarnation of turtles resurfaces for me. I'm just going, welcome back. And I'm just going, oh, I'm having so many flashbacks right now that we will talk about later in our discussion, because Turtles was life for a while for young Nathan.
Before we move on real quick, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I do want to touch base on the Jerry Curl Splinter. First of all, love it. I think it's one of those things, like, again, we often don't give Splinter a personality outside of he's the wise sensei. And at least the 90s movie do try to make him kind of a bit of a goofball. And I'm okay with that. I'm absolutely okay with that. I would bet money that the Jerry curl is a flashback to when they're he's actually first training them, so that will not be the permanent look. But like, you've got a tribe called Quest playing, and you're not going to show, like, you have that shot sitting in your back pocket, and you're not going to show that. Like, that's perfect. That's too perfect.
Well, now we move on to some more depressing, but hardly surprising news. Well, one person isn't surprising. One person I think kind of is, but I think there's some rationale here for it. And that is that Patty Jenkins and Kevin Feige's Star Wars movies both have seemingly been shelved. Those two separate projects now have been shelved over at Lucasfilm. And I'm just going, well, the Patty Jenkins thing, I feel like we talked about Rogue Squadron not too long ago. Or at least at that stage when we first talked about it, it was Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron has been delayed, but it could still possibly happen. Yeah, sure. And Rian Johnson's Star Wars trilogy is totally still happening, guys. Don't worry about it. Okay. But no, that seems like it's been shelved. And Kevin Feige's Star Wars project that he was producing has also seemingly been shelved. I'm more surprised with the Kevin Feige thing, but at the same time, I'm not. And here's why. I think Kevin Feige realizes that his talents are being stretched too thin, and he needs to put all of his attention back on Marvel and focus, especially after how Phase 4 was received, especially how Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is being received. I think he's getting a kind of a rude wake-up call of, no, you can't put the car in cruise control anymore. You got to put the hands on the wheel and actually pay attention while you're driving. You're in a rough part of town right now. So I think he might need to fully divert his attention, but also, both of these projects, I never fully got invested in just because Lucasfilm's been canceling projects left, right, and center. So until we actually got concrete news on it, I didn't believe either were actually happening. Now, people are all up in arms because supposedly the Taika Waititi directed Star Wars movie is still moving forward with a target of December 2025, and people are surprised / mad about this, but apparently Taika Waititi is probably going to cast himself in the movie, to which I'm just going, well, y'all, yeah, he does that for every movie. But here's the thing. People just reading the headlines of Taika Waititi's Star Wars movie still happening, looking to cast himself, seem to think that Taika is going to cast himself in a prominent position. Yeah. Every single Taika Waititi movie that he is in is like a cameo role. I think the biggest bit part that he was ever in was What We Do in the Shadows. And even then, that's like a balance of everyone else. But
well, I could make the argument though. I mean, I'm supporting your argument here, but like Jojo Rabbit, he is technically a main character.
He is, but he's not the main character. And you could also make the case that he's not actually a character if you want to go down that path. That's a whole that's a whole separate, like, Taika. It's not like a Clint Eastwood directing himself as the lead actor. Yeah. Taika Waititi does himself as bit parts. Great bit parts. Always kind of the same type of bit part. But I don't think that's anything to make a big deal out of. I don't think that movie, though, is coming out in 2025 at all. No, it just seems like, considering that they're still working on it, that's going to be delayed. My last thought on this before we move on to other Star Wars related things and the timing of this is people are just so upset that this is the one that's staying. They're just like, Patty Jenkins' movies get scrapped and Kevin Feige's movie gets scrapped, but the guy that did Thor, Love and Thunder still gets a Star Wars movie. And going, guys, very few people hate Thor, Love and Thunder as much as I do. It is my least favorite movie in the MCU by a wide margin. That being said, I still want a Taika Waititi Star Wars movie, and here's why. Everybody has a bad day at the office, and I hate this fan mentality of what have you done for me lately. Just because his last movie was terrible doesn't mean he doesn't have other good stuff in his repertoire. Like Josh brought up, Jojo Rabbit is great. Y'all love Thor Ragnarok. You just seem to forget about that after Love and Thunder. Or Hunt for the Wilder People is supremely underrated. So good. What We Do in the Shadows is still one of my favorite comedies of all time. I just think Taika Waititi had too much creative freedom on this one, and he was trying to go way too much. on something. He's still a talented director. Now, getting back to the Lucasfilm news at hand here. I don't think Lucasfilm wanted this news to come out now. And here's why. Star Wars Celebration is at the beginning of next month. And I think there's going to be this like question in the air of going, well, we don't really have anything coming, do we? Like, now the pressure's on for Celebration of, okay, you've got to announce stuff. What is your game plan here? Do you have a game plan? And right now, I don't know if Star Wars does have a game plan. I could be wrong. For all we know, they could march Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau out on the stage of Celebration saying, we taking over, guys! NWO is here! They're gonna take over the world of Star Wars permanently. Movies and TV will now be a crossover thing, just like the MCU, just like the DCU's doing, and we're gonna have Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau head everything up. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but I think this could also be them just scrapping any Kathleen Kennedy projects and then starting fresh over when, you know, she leaves before the end of the year. I'm still putting that on record, but
yeah.
We have 2 more Star Wars projects that have been shelved. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah. I think both of us are not surprised at all about the Patty Jenkins one. The Kevin Feige one, I think, makes sense. You can't. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, Kevin, your Phase 4 has not been well received. It's kind of hard to point. I mean, it is easy to point fingers, but it's kind of hard to pinpoint certain things. Which, side note on the Taika thing, it's interesting that just because Thor: Love and Thunder was bad, we blame Taika, but we don't do that with any of the other directors for the other movies. So, it's not like I came to Sam Raimi and was like, "Yo, like, what happened, dude? Like, Multiverse was really bad. Like, what was that?" It's just interesting
that fans definitely did to Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman 1984, but now they're back on her side because she got a Star Wars. It's weird.
Yeah, it's very weird. But no, the Kevin Feige thing makes a lot of sense, I think. They need to get a handle on what's going on because I think maybe you shared it on Twitter or I saw it or something like that, but there was an article floating around about how there's no such thing as comic book movie fatigue. It is only when you make really bad comic book movies that you start to get nervous. Fatigue is not a thing. We want to see good movies. And honestly, Phase 4 had some pretty good stuff, but it's interesting that that what is considered good will change from person to person. I mean, I know people that love She-Hulk, and I couldn't watch more than 2 episodes of it. So they're not making content for everyone now, I think, and that's also okay. But at the same time, your movies are not doing well, and if you're going to continue with this universe that you've got planned, then yeah, you might want to slow down, pump the brekes, pull over to the road, take a piss, get everything,
change your tire.
Get recalibrated here because going to the gas station, get yourself a Monster, and then get back on the road and get going. Because I think that I'm not going to be one of those doomsayers. I'm not going to be one of those people that are like, oh, Marvel's in a lot of trouble. But at the same time, I think after the movies of Phase 4, I wouldn't be surprised if Marvel's in a lot of they're heading in the direction of actually having some pretty big issues. But that being said, I think all that to just say, to me, the Kevin Feige thing makes sense. Absolutely. He can't dive into something that is as complex and narratively tough as the multiverse and just get to go hop over here and do a Star Wars movie. Unfortunately, you can't do that. Twitter's always has been my thing for oh, that's a good point. Yeah. It's Kevin's really, unfortunately, doing a multiverse thing is complicated because you can go anywhere and see anybody, but you can also go anywhere and see anybody.
Yeah.
at any time. So it starts to make death feel less permanent, less permanent than it already feels in the universe. But yeah, no, the Patty Jenkins and Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie getting scrapped. It makes sense. I'm not surprised by it. I'm trying to remember, and maybe you can remind me here, of what Star Wars actually has coming out here soon, because Mandalorian's happening.
Only thing that
Ahsoka's
I
coming
know,
out soon.
only thing I know is TV stuff. Nothing
Yeah.
movie related, because you had that. The one that's really falling by the wayside is that John Watts Star Wars thing with Jude Law, of like with a whole bunch of like, it was supposed to be like a kid show or whatever. That's supposed to be coming out. You got Ahsoka, you've got the Acolyte, but these are all Disney Plus shows, and I think ever since Rise of Skywalker, I think Disney had expansive plans for stories and adventures post Rise of Skywalker, post the sequel trilogy, and then the sequel trilogy actually happened without a proper plan. They just go, well, balls. Now what do we do? And I think ever since Rise of Skywalker, they've just been like, well, crap. What do we do now? And I think they've finally come to the realization of, okay, scrap everything, start small, start simple, start over. And I think that's essentially what they're doing here with the TV. But well, we're not going to delve too much into spoilers for Mando, but I think Filoni and Favreau have a plan that's just going to start on the small screen first. But there's a certain blue antagonist to Star Wars that I can see being an overriding threat to multiple shows, and I could see Filoni and Favreau kind of, I don't want to say retconning the events of the sequel trilogy, but giving fans kind of what they're hoping for with the sequel trilogy of characters that they're familiar with, tone that they're familiar with, and just more familiarity, not retreading things or just recycling old characters, but something that's closer in the spirit of the Star Wars that people know and love. Something closer to Force Awakens. We all want to bash on the sequel trilogy as a whole now, but not enough people give Force Awakens credit, because Force Awakens is still good and still holds up. It's the rest of the trilogy that completely crumbles and falls. I think Lucasfilm has just come to the realization of, okay, we gotta stop announcing crap. We need to formulate a plan and figure out, we need to just back burner the movies for a while, figure out what we're doing with TV, and just makes me really curious what we're going to get at Star Wars Celebration this year, because like D23 last year, you better announce something or you're in big, big trouble. Next up for movie news, again, I'm not going to say it's very surprising, but it's still good news nonetheless, and that is that Jon Bernthal is returning as the Punisher in Daredevil Born Again, and the world cried out in joy together. Now, the big question is, like Daredevil itself and like Kingpin showing up in Hawkeye, is this the same version that we got before, or are we going to multiverse this?
I'm not even going to let you entertain it. No.
I'm kind of with you. I think Kevin Feige, loving the multiverse as much as he does, I think that's how he's going to, quote unquote, cleverly explain away how all the Netflix characters, except for Finn as Iron Fist, have all come back into the MCU, just slightly different than we know, and slightly PG-13ier than we knew before.
Gosh, yeah. Especially with that Kingpin appearance.
Yeah, that Kingpin appearance didn't do the character any favors, but I have maintained ever since the characters left Netflix, of going, okay, all these people very much could show up in the MCU someday. They'll probably just be slightly different than what they were before. Except Finn Jones. Is it Finn Jones? I don't even care at this point. He sucks so much. Whoever played Iron Fist, Kevin Feige's not stupid. Kevin Feige will recast Iron Fist, but everyone else will be brought back. But apparently not everybody, as certain characters from Daredevil, the Netflix show, aren't coming back for this series. So whether they're just going to be excluded from the series entirely or whether they're going to be recast is unclear. But we get Jon Bernthal back. We can't expect it to be the same hard R-rated Punisher, but to me, talent will always translate. So no matter what they're doing with the character, I'm excited because Jon Bernthal is an immense talent to add to your roster. So no matter what you give him, I'll be excited because I know he's going to perform, and he was so perfectly cast as the Punisher that even if he's not busting open kneecaps this time around, I still will completely buy him as the Punisher. But silver lining of hope here before I hand over to Josh. We know Deadpool 3 is going to be rated R. So it could potentially slightly crack open the door for other R-rated projects in the MCU. They might be incredibly limited, but like it might just end up being like Deadpool, Punisher, Blade. See, I don't even think Blade will be rated R, but maybe a handful of R-rated stuff. But Josh, as the John, I called you John. Yeah, we'll go with that. Josh is going to take that. Josh will take that to the bank. So, John, now that you're back in the MCU, Josh, as the diehard Jon Bernthal fan that you are, thoughts? Oh boy.
Fine. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm fine with it. I think unfortunately kind of like Kingpin. If you're not going to bring that version back, I kind of don't want it. I love the Kingpin from the Netflix Daredevil show, and I wish that is the Kingpin that we got in Hawkeye, and it wasn't. Not only was it not, it wasn't even close. There were several things that she did to him that, like, why are you taking that, dude? I've literally seen you smack somebody's head through a wall. Like, why are you taking that? Like, stop it. And I'm just really worried that I'm going to get that feeling with this. Punisher, admittedly, is a little easier to do on screen. He's not this like hyper big, like weirdly not super powered, but oddly super strong thing like Kingpin is. I can see the Punisher fitting a lot better into this world. That being said, I can see him like butting heads a lot with our new Captain America.
Maybe actually butting heads with him.
Yeah, like quite literally, both metaphorically and physically. I can see. I think I can see the Punisher's place in this MCU a lot better, a lot easier than I can with Kingpin. I'm just like imagining now that we have an actual like New York Spider-Man, seeing how Tom Holland's going to interact with John. That is going to be super cool and super interesting. I think there is definitely a PG version of the Punisher that can work, but bringing back the same guy that did the basically NA version of Punisher, I just don't know if that is the right call. As much as I love John and as much as I love his version of Frank Castle, I just don't know if it's the right call.
Yeah, I'm still excited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We just got to look at how the other Netflix characters have been used so well, and it's so spotty because Kingpin essentially was just brought in to job to Kate Bishop,
which is terrible.
Like how Superman was used on Supergirl, but thankfully they remedied that for Superman and Lois. He was just a jobber, really. He wasn't that big or intimidating. But then you get like Matt Murdock's Daredevil, who was great in No Way Home, and I know some people had some issues with how he showed up in She-Hulk. When he's Daredevil, he's perfect. And the Matt Murdock stuff, whether you like it or not, it's not that far off from how he's portrayed in the comics. Like,
yeah,
comics can be a little weird, and I think that, whether you liked it or not, it fit for those characters' history. So how we see Punisher, I'm hoping he's not just there to like job out to somebody else, a la Kingpin.
Yeah, that's I think what I'm worried about.
Marvel keeps like teasing these like darker characters like Punisher and Blade and Daredevil. Whether they actually will do anything, I'm not sure, or if we just get like a darker MCU like the corner of it at some point. I don't know if they'll ever go with that. we're just getting so many characters, and I don't know how they're gonna play into the larger picture. It just, you brought it up earlier with the multiverse stuff. It's the web might be getting a little too convoluted for its own good, but hey, nice to see Punisher's coming back for Daredevil. Never a bad idea. Always super cool. Now, it's super trendy right now to just look at video games and just go, all right, what can we adapt? However, this one I totally can see and totally agree with. Now, a while ago, we found out that Blumhouse is teaming up with James Wan's Atomic Monster to basically, like, become its own, like, separate entity. Entity. You see what I did there?
Right.
And they are going to be doing their own horror movies. Well, sounds like one of the first projects they're going to be doing is an adaptation of the iconic horror game Dead by Daylight. And this just makes me happy. Dead by Daylight isn't one of my like favorite games, but I do thoroughly enjoy playing it. It's one of those games that's like always on my system, whether I play it or not. It's always downloaded and ready to go. So for those that are unaware, Dead by Daylight is a survival horror game in which case you are either playing as one of 4 survivors on a team or one of the killers. If you're the killer, easy enough. Hunt down and kill the 4 survivors before they have time to escape. If you're one of the survivors, you're trying to either start up a generator or find a trap door in the map to escape. Your whole job is to escape and not be caught and strung up on a big old hook because the monsters are trying to basically kill you. Not for their purposes, but for a larger purpose. There's like this thing called the entity that they're serving. I am so on board with this. I will say, though, right off the bat, when they make this movie, it's not going to be a 4-on-1 situation here because 3 kills, maybe 4 if you want to kill everyone, is not that exciting. You need to kill a lot of people. And also, I don't think you're going to get just one killer. That's kind of the fun of Dead by Daylight is over the years, because this game's been going on forever and is a model of a healthy live service game as opposed to something else where that was, hey, we'll drip feed you content over the next 3 to 4 years. We don't really know what that content's going to be yet, but Dead by Daylight still has a strong and fostering community. It's great. They have introduced so many killers over the years, whether it was original or IP characters. I know people want IP characters like a Michael Myers, like a Ghostface, like a Freddy, like a Leatherface. Scrap all of those. That is not happening. But thankfully, all the original characters, all the original characters could still work. There's clever and original creature design, so the monsters have their own unique skill sets. I think this could be a really, really cool idea. It's just, Josh is gonna hate me for this. What's the hook here? What's
Boo!
What's
Somebody boo this man!
what's gonna capture the minds of the general population here? What's gonna get them interested in this story? Is it, oh look, spoopy monster? Or I don't think the general population has heard of Dead by Daylight enough to care. That being said, I don't care about the general population. I want this movie. So, yeah. Josh, as someone that's played Dead by Daylight a little bit, we need to hop on it again sometime. Are you excited for this, or you think it's weird?
I'm not necessarily excited, but I'm definitely intrigued to see how they go about this. Because, like you, I'm very much like, okay, cool. So what's the catch? Like, what's the story here? Are you going to seriously sit us down in a theater and go, all right, so these killers are trying to, sacrifice humans. Okay. Here's my pitch. All right. We get a Purge-esque style where it takes over the course of a day. You have, I don't know, maybe pick 3 or 4 of the killers, and they are going to go through the city. And that, of course, like the Purge, while there's a lot of people and there's a lot of stuff happening in the city, we focus on a group of 4, a group of like 4 or 5. And so so it is like, hey, or we just have to survive to daylight.
Or we can have like 2 or 3 groups of 4 That way
Yeah.
we can still get our groupings, and then each being hunted by a different monster in different locations to keep it fresh, like different places on a map. But I don't mind the city idea. And naturally,
Yeah.
obviously, the person that's like summoning these monsters has to be one of the first people to die because things got out of control.
Yes. I think what will be interesting will be if, because in the games you can't kill the killers. Like that's not a thing you can do, and that's kind of not interesting from a movie narrative standpoint. You've got to be able to win somehow. Maybe it's daylight. Maybe the person that summons these monsters, they can only be around for one night, and but of course of one evening or something like that. And daylight is the thing that when daylight happens, they go back. So there's like a time limit kind of thing. I don't know. It's definitely intriguing. Like kind of like how they're doing a FNAF movie right now is in production. Cool. I would love the idea of adapting games. I just don't know how you're going to get the same experience from the game into the movie. I mean, The Last of Us has shown that you can do that, but like some of these like are multiplayer games, so there's some experiences that people have with these games that are not possible for everybody across the board.
Yeah, you can't just put in a movie you just yelling and swearing at your teammates that are letting you die so they can escape.
Correct.
Last up for news this week, we have yet another adaptation, this time a remake. Robert Eggers' Nosferatu, that thing besides Ninja Turtles that Josh has invested his entire life into. But thankfully, it seems like Josh will be rewarded with a stellar cast. And yes, we will talk about every single bit of casting news when it comes to this movie, if it warrants it. And in this case, I think it does, because it seems like we've rounded out the cast for Robert Eggers' Nosferatu with Aaron Taylor Johnson. And I'm going, okay, if this was a few months ago, I'll be honest, I would not be that excited. Mm-hmm. But given that it is now March of 2023, I am very excited by this. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson is definitely winning me over as an actor, and I still firmly believe that he will be our next James Bond. I'm very much in that camp now. Bullet Train was so entertaining, and he was so good in it that I think he kind of redeemed himself in my eyes for Godzilla, which, albeit was not his fault. All the human characters kind of sucked in that movie.
Yeah.
While I haven't been as excited for it as Josh is, I have wanted a Nosferatu remake for a really long time because I like old school spoopy gothic horror, and that is Nosferatu to a T. Like, I've seen the original a few times. It's pretty good. I've seen the Werner Herzog one. It gets that gothic atmosphere perfectly. But looking at the rest of this cast, I've just been so excited for the cast, but also what Robert Eggers will bring to the table because, as we mentioned before on the podcast, Robert Eggers very much does his homework when it comes to atmosphere and style and aesthetic of whatever time period is being represented. So like the Vavitch is very much set in that old Americana, and the dialogue is very much for it, whether you like that or not. The Lighthouse is weird as hell, but it's a Robert Eggers movie. So I've been so excited to see what he brings to the table for a Nosferatu movie. I kind of hope he does it like he does for the Lighthouse, of it's a box frame and everything feels much more claustrophobic.
Oh, I can see him doing it too, and I would almost guarantee he's gonna do it in black and white.
I need it to be in black and white.
Like I don't see him doing this not in black and white at all.
I need it to be in black and white, actually.
Yeah, like. I'm with you though. I think if you would have told me this in December, I would have laughed at you and said that's a terrible idea. But now Bullet Train is a thing, and now Aaron Taylor Johnson is admittedly a pretty interesting person to watch on screen. It sounds like his personal life is starting to get better from certain people not holding him back anymore. So we'll see what happens, man. I'm really excited to see where he goes. I think he is incredibly talented. I mean, he's a handsome dude, whether you just like him or not. And he's he definitely has this like, I want to say aura or like gravitas to him. It might be pushing it a little bit, but like he definitely has like like a certain vibe to him that I don't think that some actors bring with them. Kind of like uh oh my goodness. He's also in Bullet Train, blonde hair, main character,
Brad Pitt.
Oh my gosh. I've been having a bad brain day, so it's okay. But like Brad Pitt, like he also brings a certain kind of like, oh, Brad Pitt's gonna do this. Oh, that'll be interesting. I kind of already know what I'm gonna get, but like he's gonna be entertaining no matter what. So I'm excited. I mean, yes, it's a Robert Eggers Nosferatu movie, something that you told me would never happen, which is why I'm so hyped about it.
I said it because Robert Eggers himself said it. Robert Eggers himself was just like, I don't think it's gonna happen, man. But
I know, but screw him.
what I like is Aaron Taylor Johnson, I believe, could play both good or bad. I lean towards good here, but I think he could play either good or bad. We already know Bill Skarsgård is playing Nosferatu. You got Willem Dafoe as probably just Willem Dafoe. So it's been a while since I've seen Nosferatu, but I know it's basically just a Dracula ripoff. In Dracula, you've got the three core characters of Dracula, Jonathan Harker, and Mina. I think it's Mina. It's been a while. And it creates that love triangle. I could absolutely see Aaron Taylor Johnson being a Jonathan Harker type character. And Lily Rose Depp being the Mina character. Because we already got Bill Skarsgård being Nosferatu. I'm just really, really excited for this movie. This is definitely one of those, like, we've been following this long enough. This is probably one of my most anticipated ever, just because of the potential and how creepy and gothic it could be. And also, I do want this to be in black and white, but how cool would it be if the whole movie's in black and white, except anytime there's blood is bright red that just pops like Sin City?
Which is like, if anybody was going to do it, I can see it being Robert Eggers. Like, there's no doubt about it. So I'm excited about it. Why not? Give me a teaser already, please.
Before we get in our main discussion, you know the drill. Go to the Uncharted Media shop at TeePublic. Support the show. Get your TeePublic shirts, mugs, hoodies, whatever you want with the Uncharted Media logo on it, or our other fantastic designs, tinfoil hat theory shirts, whatever you want. And also, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube. Share it with your fellow film fans. Now, I don't know how long this discussion will be, but it won't be a short one, so buckle in, because it's turtle time, guys. Cowabunga. I don't think you understand. I have been excited for this for the past few days, ever since I pitched this idea to Josh over the weekend. I'm just going, dude, with the Turtles trailer, you want to talk turtles? And no, not like Master of Disguise, of turtley enough for the Turtle Club. And yes, only like 5 people that listen to this podcast will understand a Master of Disguise reference. But that's where we're at, because, like I said earlier, whenever there's a new Turtles anything, I get this like big wave of excitement and nostalgia for the Ninja Turtles. Like, I remember when the first Michael Bay one was coming out, I'm going, oh, yay, Turtles are back. And then I saw the movie and going, no, Turtles, go back. So I have a long history with the Turtles. I haven't really talked about it on my podcast. Don't really talk about it as much as other fandoms. And I think it's just because other fandoms I have kept up with. I still watch all the Marvel stuff. I still watch all the DC stuff. I still read comics from DC from time to time. Mm-hmm. Turtles, I never actually really followed the comics. I think that's more of Josh's department. But for a good stretch of time there, I was a huge Ninja Turtles fan. And it all coincided with the 2000s TV series, not the 80s one. However, I was still somewhat familiar with it. So, before I go into my whole, like, turtle history, Josh, what is your earliest memory of the Ninja Turtles? How did you get introduced to them?
I introduced myself to them. This will tell you a lot about me as a kid. So we used to go to the library like a lot. So we'd go through the library for like books. I mean, it was also the place I first got introduced to like manga and comic books was there as well. But the thing was, for better or for worse, my mom would let us. We had our own library cards. She would let, like we'd walk in the door and we had free reign. Go find some. For the Pizza Hut Club, you had to have this many books.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we all make sure you get these books. And if you see a movie, bring it to me, and I'll double check it, and then you can check it out or whatever. And I was like, all right, cool. So went and got whatever Redwall book I was reading at the time, or there's like
Shocker.
there was some there still to this day I don't know what this book was called, but I loved it. It was like something about like a Griffin War, which was like super cool. Anyway, the sometime during that period where I was a regular at the Harris County Library, I saw a VHS of the first 90s TMNT movie. And I was like, this looks super cool. Oh, it's got ninja stuff. I love ninja stuff. I'm not supposed to watch violent stuff though. I was not allowed. My parents knew about like Power Rangers and stuff like that. And like, I knew I was not
Who has crossed over with the Turtles before. Correct.
And their current crossover is Chef's Kiss. Even if it is weird to see the Turtles as human. So what I did was I took the VHS and didn't check with my mom and just checked it out. And then like we had a TV upstairs that had a VHS player built into it. So I was just like, my mom taught piano during the day. So I would just like pop it in and like watch it all the way through. And then her piano lesson would end and I'd be like, oh, I don't know. Oh, that goes to my room. Oh, I guess I'll check that out. Check that back in about a week. Until like that went on for like 3 days or whatever. I'd watched it like once a day for like 3 days. And her piano lesson like ended early and I didn't know. And she came upstairs and was like, what is this? What are you watching? You're not supposed to watch stuff like this. So that was my first interaction with the Turtles. But
to remedy that, you just watched the second one instead, in which case there's no violence whatsoever because too many people like your mom complained about it.
I actually didn't even know that the other two existed until like college. Because like I just didn't like I read I saw the movie, found out there were comics and went for the comics because those were more easily accessible to me, and then also I could hide those easier. So like it
just sounds dirty when you say it like that.
Yeah, I agree. And then of course like there was the 2000s TV show, which
the greatest thing of all time
to me, still one of the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle show. Yeah, that's my first interactions, my first memories with that. What about you?
So this is gonna be like weird rabbit hole here, and I don't know why I still remember it, and I still to this day don't know how we actually got this thing. But I remember I somehow got a random DVD in the mail one time for it's like Fox Kids or something like that. And so it was like this DVD that had like maybe 5 or 10 minutes of every TV show that would be on that Saturday. So it had like a little snippet of like Sonic X. It had a little bit of Ninja Turtles.
Sonic X, let's go, baby.
And so it gave you like a little teaser of all these shows, and every time like they would like dub over part of the scene and be like, enter this code online and you get more information about the show or whatever else. So it was essentially a DVD advertising Saturday morning cartoons. And I still to this day don't know how he got it, but the Ninja Turtles section was better than anything else. And it was this section of like some of the turtles talking, and then all of a sudden, Leonardo being thrown violently through a window out of nowhere, and he's I didn't know it at the time, but he's badly dubbed over going, the Shredder was looking for the code. The code is whatever, whatever, whatever. And you're supposed to type that into a website sometime later. It's from the actual
season. That's like the season finale. Like the first season finale when he gets thrown through the window.
Not quite. The first season finale is when they storm the castle.
Well, after they get Leo back.
Yeah. And so I was just like, whoa, that's so cool. I need to go check out this Saturday. And it was not connected to that episode whatsoever, so I was uber lost. But from that point forward, I was watching that 2000s Ninja Turtles just hooked every single week. And I'd watch like Sonic and some of the other shows that were advertised on this DVD, and I still have no idea how I got that DVD or what the point of the advertising was, or why companies are just sending out DVDs to advertise Saturday morning cartoons. But I watched that, and then
could you imagine if companies did that now? Like,
kids would be like, "What's a DVD?"
Oh, I mean, there's that, but also like parents are like, why are you sending my kid The Amazing World of Gumball, or like Clarence, or Uncle Grandpa? Like, oh gosh.
So I get it. And I watched that 2000s Ninja Turtles all the time, and it's still, to me, I know people are biased that grew up with like the 80s version of the Teenage Mutant Ninja. The 2000s one hit so hard of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You're like, oh. And then better yet, I had the Game Boy Advance version, and every time you booted up the game on Game Boy Advance, it'd do like the little like 8-bit version of that intro. I'm like, oh, it's so perfect. But I watched every single week, and so I kind of became a big Turtles fan, and I'm going, okay, what else can I watch with the Turtles stuff? My grandma got me season 5 of the 80s version in like this weird box set, and I'm just going, first of all, the fact that it was like season 5, it was like a random hodgepodge of episodes from one of the later seasons. I'm going, this is
not
different.
good.
This is fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 80s one never really connected with me, but the movies I watched on repeat so much. And also I didn't realize this until I was an adult. I don't want to say broken, but how cheap that first one is. Of like, there's so many glaring problems that don't ruin the movie, but like, you can see the puppeteers' faces on numerous occasions. You can see people in the background of shots.
Yeah. It's why there's not an HD remake.
I want a 4K. Actually, there is an HD. There's not a 4K version. I want a 4K version, please.
But like, no, that would be horrifying. The amount of stuff that you would see is that's not okay.
But the first one, screw the other ones. But we'll actually go through all the Turtle movies here in a little bit. But that first one is one of those times that you rewatch a movie that you loved as a child, and it still holds up and actually gets better as an adult. That first one is so good. But I remember watching that to death, and I could still quote it to this day. But I was a big fan of the 2000s show, and so, as some of you probably have pieced together by now, if I'm a fan of something, I will go all out for said thing. So...
What? No way.
Story time.
News to me.
Story time.
Story time.
I was still living in Pennsylvania at the time, and so for my birthday, one of our neighbors, we were friends with, they didn't have any kids of their own, so they would get birthday stuff for me every once in a while. I got literally every toy in the Ninja Turtles line that year for my birthday. Literally everything. All four Turtles, Shredder, Foot Soldier, the truck, the fortress, the speeder bike that the Foot Clan hop onto, the samurais.
Dude, that thing was so cool.
Oh, yeah, with the little razor fins on the side. And so apparently my neighbors didn't tell my mom and dad that, and they had already bought all that stuff, so they had to go back and return all of it. I got Ninja Turtles playing cards that year. I also question to this day why Casey Jones's hair is blue in the earlier seasons. It's not black, it's blue. It's not even like an anime style blue. It's just like a shading that I always thought was bizarre.
It's got to be one of those, like, we want to give him black hair, but we want to be able to show movement, so let's go with a dark blue.
But yeah, those original Turtles, and especially that 2000s one, I would remember, there's certain memories that I remember TV wise, watching with my dad. I remember watching Yu-Gi-Oh every Saturday, but I remember how big of a deal that first season finale was, because other animated shows like Justice League did episodes in sections. Like they would do like a 3-episode arc on Justice League. That didn't happen as much for Ninja Turtles. So we're getting to the finale and they're going, we're going to break into Splinter's headquarters and beat him once and for all. And so we're getting close to the end of that first episode. I'm going, man, they're still on the first floor. We've got a lot of ground to cover in the next 5 minutes of this episode. And then they escape some of the Foot Clan. No, they're about to fight the Foot Clan. They beat them. And all of a sudden, invisible Foot Clan come out of nowhere. And I'm going, oh, what the heck's happening? And it just says, to be continued. I'm going, holy crap, we got a cliffhanger. And then they had the balls to do it 2 more times. Because then the next one, the cliffhanger for the next episode is when you meet the clone shredders, which is apparently like an actual storyline from the comics. And I was going, what?
It's terrifying.
And then the ending of like the 3rd episode was like Baxter Stockman showing up in a big huge mech suit. And then the big final rematch, Leo versus Shredder, where Leo chops off Shredder's head, and then honestly one of the most badass moments in television history. The Turtles walk away, they celebrate. You see Shredder stand up, pick his head up, and walk away through the fire. I'm just going, what?
It was, dude, I remember watching that as a kid going like, what? And then we don't deal with it for like another season. Like we don't even come back to Earth for another season. It's so good. That first show, I think I did a rewatch of the first season recently, actually. And it still got me as an adult, like, oh no, that's a big no. I mean, luckily I could just be like, next episode, thank you. But like as a kid, like that hit me so hard. I have for whatever reason, a vivid memory of like my dad overhearing some of the dialogue, and like Raph was like, "Shell, yeah," and he was like, "You're not watching that show anymore." I was like, "But Dad!"
And now Josh still says some of that vernacular to this day.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm curious how that late 2010s movie hit you, or early 2010s.
2007. 2007.
Oh, jeez.
So here's what we'll do is we'll go through all the movies, because I guarantee you we've seen all of them, whether we wanted to or not.
For better or worse.
So we'll start with the 90s one. We'll start with the best Ninja Turtles movie ever made. And Josh is insisting until this new one comes out, in which case that'll be even better. I don't know.
Actually, I think I'm going to fight you on that one.
Really? You think the 2007 one?
I honestly do.
All right, we'll get there. We'll get there. But the original 90s one, the one that started it all, for a while there, it was actually the highest grossing independent movie of all time. Doesn't surprise me. It is so good, but it's so, I can't even imagine, because I just don't remember a time that I don't remember this movie. I can't imagine being a Turtles fan of like the 80s version of the characters and then seeing the 90s movie, because they're so radically different. And the 90s one, I think, finds this perfect balance of the 80s cartoon and the original dark comic, because the original comic is pretty violent and dark, but they find this like happy medium of...
Wasn't it? Mm-hmm. No, I'm sorry. I think it was you who sent me the video of the guy breaking down like all the script changes that they had to do, because the original plot was way darker than what the product that we got.
Yeah. So I think they find this happy medium of like there's some dumb, stupid, like childish humor, but at the same time, like for a movie with not a lot of budget and not a huge name director attached to it, it is a very well-made cinematic movie in terms of like its use of shadows. Its lighting is very moody and gothic and very noir driven. Like it feels much more mature than it actually is. It does feel like a dark story in a very crime-infested world. I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound weird, but I could see the Crow existing in this world with how like this universe is presented of like it's gross and it's grimy. It kind of has a Crow vibe to it. Just not quite as dark, but there's still some levity to it. And I think everyone's so perfectly cast. Like, April is perfect. Casey Jones, you will never get a better Casey Jones. I'm sorry.
No, he was perfect.
Was it Chris Evans in the 2007 movie? He sucked. I'm sorry. We have not had a good Casey Jones since the original movie. He was so perfect. The relationship between him and Raph was great. The relationship between him and April was even better. Shredder has never been more intimidating. The 2000s TV show was pretty intimidating. Shredder was perfect. I have rewatched the 90s one so much, and I could just quote you the whole thing. It does the Turtles justice, but it's got a surprising amount of heart. You still get that great line from Splinter. All fathers care for their sons. And you're just like, oh, you actually had this really good B storyline going here with Ginger Danny here and his cop dad. It's just so good. I need to rewatch it again just because it's been a while, and it was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and it still holds up, I think. I think, wasn't the 90s one the first time that the Turtles themselves looked different in terms of their facial and structural sizes? Because the 80s cartoon, you could basically just desaturate everything and you couldn't tell the Turtles apart. This one, they look different, which would be a trend going forward now of you can clearly tell which one is Raph, which one is Mikey, which one's Donnie, which one's Leo. Oh, also, before I toss it over to you, Josh, I forgot, we haven't established this from the get-go. Who was your favorite turtle / who's the best turtle?
Look, man, I love Raph. I think part of that is because he's such a... just hear me out, okay? Because he's such a central part of the 90s movie, that's the one I attached to the most. And I think for a long time, up until probably... this last Ronin run, he's really the only one that has any significant, like, really traumatic, like, emotional growth. Even like Leo is, as much as, you know, the people that love Leo, like, his arc in the 2000s show is like, I want to be a better leader and I've got to be better at it. And then he just gets beat up and he's like, oh, I gotta be better. Blah, blah, blah. Whereas like Raph always deals with being like the angry one and how that makes him feel and stuff like that. Like, and that's, I think, something maybe I'm hoping for in this new one with Seth Rogen is that, like, that part is still in Raph, but then we give Donnie and Mikey some actual, like, emotional struggles, which is why I think I loved, like, The Last Ronin, and why I wish they had kept a lot of the darker tones in the original 90s, because it was Mikey having to deal with, like, the fact that maybe Splinter won't be there anymore, and that's really tough for him. And I love Raph. I think, to me, he's the most emotionally complex one. But a lot of that is just and I will sit here and admit this. A lot of that is just because he's the only one they've allowed to be emotionally complex up to a certain point in time.
I like Raph because he's red and he has cool swords. That's it.
That's great.
I've always liked Raph the best because his size are cool and he's stronger and he kicks everyone else's butt.
He does. He is way cooler. He just, like, Leo's cool, but, like, if you don't like someone who is, I don't want to say pretentious, but, like, has that lordy kind of attitude, a majority of Turtles media, like, portrays him that way. And, like, Donnie's cool, but, like, he's also kind of hard to get behind. He's just kind of like the nerdy friend that you always have around. And Mikey is eternally the little brother, which is great, but, like, it doesn't give him enough for anybody to really hold on to as far as, like, from a character standpoint. That's why I think, like, anytime you ask somebody, like, who's your favorite turtle, it's always either Raph or Leo. Always.
Here's the funny thing is, by definition, you would think Leo would be my favorite because Leo is probably the closest to, like, a Nightwing type of, like...
Yeah.
burdened with leadership whether they want it or not. And I don't like the character of Jason Todd all that much, and he's the closest to Raph because there's a Robin for every Ninja Turtle. I think Leo is Nightwing, Raph is Jason, Tim is Donnie, and then by default, the younger brother is Damien, who also wears a lot of brighter colors. That last one's a bit of a stretch, but you would think it would be Leo, but Leo never really did it for me. I was like Raph better. But yeah, besides you absconding with a copy of the 90s tape, any other, what's your big takeaways from the 90s one, the original movie?
Oh, no, I love it. I think it's a really, to me, it's a really good introduction to the Turtles. Even before you get to like the comics and stuff like that, but like it's a really good introduction. It's a lot of fun. Despite my wishes now that I've seen like what it could have been, I do think the end product is pretty good, man. Like even like we joke about it, but like Splinter's Cowabunga at the end is chef's kiss. I love it so much. Pizza, it's very, very quotable with the Pizza Man's got 30 seconds. Like
Pizza Dude's got 30 seconds.
Very good about that.
Wise man once said, forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
So good.
I could still quote so much of that.
Such a fun film.
So now, what?
But I think it definitely like, it does. I don't know if it's aged well, which is the only like.
I think it has, except for the goofier stuff. I don't think the goofier stuff has aged well.
It was added later and all that stuff.
Yeah. So then that takes us to, I believe, is 1991. Like they rushed the sequel into production. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
That makes money. Let's do it again.
Well, too many parents complained, so they ruined the fun for the sequel. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, also known as the one Nathan has a soft spot for, even though he knows it's garbage. So here's the thing.
I feel you so much on that.
The first one is easily the best. And as a kid, I noticed some quality drop off in the second one, but I would watch the second one almost as much as the first one, but not quite as much. Still to this day, I will still watch the second one and claim that there's some good stuff here.
There is.
The Turtles are still the best part. I don't know what's happening here with Bebop and Rocksteady. You like completely backburnered Shredder for this. Like, okay. Also, this is where my little kid brain was at, that it just didn't make sense to me. In the first Ninja Turtles, Shredder's terrifying and cool and badass and everything else with his like cool helmet, and he's got his nice maroon outfit. Somehow, when he comes out of the sewer and whatnot, he now has a purple outfit, and I'm going, where'd you get new swag from, Shredder? Like, I get the new helmet. It showed you creating a new helmet. But why are you purple now? Is it because the cartoon did it purple? Why'd you make this weird switch?
That's exactly what it is.
That's where my brain was. Not why is this discount Bebop and Rocksteady here instead? No, it was why is Shredder purple now? And I hadn't even thought about why aren't the Turtles using their weapons, because apparently it was very controversial, the first one, in terms of level of violence. So the Turtles never actually used their bow staff, their katanas, the nunchucks, and everything else. They just use their fists, which is somehow less violent. And also, in the words of Mikey, they use combat cold cuts at the beginning when they're beating up goons. They're literally slapping them on the face with sausage.
Yeah, I get the flack that some, quote unquote hardcore fans give it, but like, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Heaven forbid this dumb children's movie be targeted at children.
We can talk the crap about all the crap about Go Ninja Go all the day, but at the end of the day, the song slaps. It's so good.
Now,
oh, dude.
Okay.
And Monster Shredder is terrifying.
Yeah.
When they do get to him, he is absolutely terrifying.
Well, it's even scarier. It was Kevin Nash the whole time talking to the Booker, going, "Make sure I go over strong here, brother." And he tore, and most likely he tore both of his quads on the way to fight the Turtles.
Love it.
There is one thing, though, with Ninja Turtles 2 that has not aged well. I'm just going, wow, this is actually horrible. And that's the character of Kino. Oh my God.
Yeesh.
I didn't hate them as a kid, but now I'm just going, wow. I actually want you dead. Like, you are just the worst. Like, his character introduction is him delivering pizzas to people, and then when a girl turns him down, he just goes, good, I kind of wanted something thinner. And I'm going, what the heck is wrong with you? That chick's not even, like, there's nothing wrong. She's an average-sized woman, you douchebag. Like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, he's not a good guy.
And then, oh my gosh, we won't bring it up, but for those that know, what was Splinter doing on the roof? The worst pause in movie history.
The worst cut. Like, why?
Just look it up. It's so funny. For me, second one is where you notice a quality drop, but as a kid, I didn't notice a huge quality drop, and still to this day, I'll watch it. It is very of its time, but I think the second Ninja Turtles is closer to that 80s cartoon of being very much cartoonish and for children. And that's okay. Heaven forbid the Turtles be a little cartoonish and for children from time to time. The Turtles have been many things, and that's okay. Then we jump the turtle with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, which, remind me, Josh, I don't think the third one has a subtitle. I thought sometimes actually, it might be like...
Let me look.
I feel like sometimes I thought it was like Lost in Time or Passage of Time, or is it... I think other versions just have it being called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, in which case there's like a little magical torch thingy that has the turtles.
Okay, don't start getting nitpicky on weirdness now.
It's like a torch thingy that's... I'm not mad that the turtles went back in time. I'm more just going, you switched places with... more than anything else. They switch places with 4 samurais from the past, and so the turtles go back to feudal Japan.
Yeah, it's literally it's literally just Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Subtext.
And so you got a whole bunch of Englishmen trying to take over feudal Japan, and then they think the turtles are like these saviors that have come to protect their city, like
let's go Kappas!
7 Samurai style, while also introducing the Japanese people, to how to make pizza, and also how to save children from a burning building, and then giving them mouth to mouth. I'm just going, let's not do this. But okay. It's funny though, because then the samurais, oh boy, they're in our timeline. Oh no, what are they going to do? So now Casey Jones has to teach fully grown men in diapers how to act like people in the 20th century. And I'm just going, here's where things have gone off the rails a little bit, I think. Just a little bit.
I kind of really like the third one. As a kid, okay, so hear me out. Let him cook. As a kid, I like when I saw the third one, I was starting to get into like really old, like somewhat crappy, like kung fu movies. So like, if you like those, Ninja Turtles 3 it's not far off. It's
no.
pretty close.
But here's the thing. Also, I think the biggest negative that a lot of people have, myself included, with Ninja Turtles 3 is the costumes are god awful.
Oh, no, they're terrible.
At least with the second one, they still had Jim Henson's production company working and making the suits. So there's at least a little bit of continuity there of the turtles more or less looking the same. The third one is not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles anymore. It is Teenage Mutant Ninja Salamanders. They have liver spots, and the color is all weird, and their skin is way too smooth, and they all kind of look the same, which kind of defeats the purpose and the hard work that was put into the costume design for the first 2 movies. Although the third one does something that had not been done. It was done very, very briefly in the first movie, and I think Josh knows where I'm going with this. And it's something that doesn't get used enough in Ninja Turtles movies, and that is the turtles actually hiding in their shell for a little bit.
Yes,
like,
it's
guys,
so good.
they point a cannon, I think, at Michelangelo's face. They're like, "We're gonna shoot your face off." Oh no! And then as soon as they shoot it, it just shrinks his head into his little thing. I'm just going, "Oh yeah, that's a thing that turtles can do." Why didn't we do that sooner?
Yeah.
I was going, okay, this movie's dumb. And when the villain falls to his death off the mountain, the splash effect happens before he hits the water.
Terrible. Look, man, I know it's a bad movie, okay? I'm not sitting here saying that it's like, better than 2 or anything like that. I'm just saying that it's a fun time, okay?
And here's why I'll give 3 a pass, because I'm here to hurt Josh emotionally.
No, you don't. No, there's not a 4th one.
There is. We are going down this road, Josh. No. We are going down this road to talk about the unofficial, official Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4 with the girl turtle that is Venus de Milo, who, all the turtles have their own unique colors of red, purple, blue, and orange. And Venus de Milo, slightly lighter color of blue. She's the turtle's long lost sister. So I need to bring this story up. I need to bring this movie up because so many people have overlooked it, and I wish I could have lived. I wish I could have overlooked this, but then again, like I said earlier, when I'm a diehard fan of something, I can't halfway it. I have to be fully enveloped into it. So growing up, I would see the 3 movies a lot, but I always heard about this 4th one, or some people would talk about it, not very often, but they'd be like, oh yeah, that one with Venus de Milo. I knew, even as a kid, something's got to be up with this 4th one if they're always selling the first 3 as like a package together, like a DVD or a Blu-ray combo, or they're always together in the stores. And then the 4th one is always sequestered off doing its own thing.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy.
So even as a kid, I'm just going, something's not quite right here. And then I watched it going, something's not quite right here.
Yeah.
I think it's because, if I remember correctly, this Turtles movie was not a sequel to the 3rd one. Wasn't it connected to like that television series that crossed over with Power Rangers? Because the design of Venus de Milo looks more like it would fit on a Power Rangers show. This movie is just, I know people like to bag on the Michael Bay movies, and we'll get there, but guys, anytime somebody says this is a new low for the Turtles franchise, guys, the Turtles have been around so long and have tried so much weird stuff that we'll never have the quote-unquote worst of the Ninja Turtles. You do realize they had a Christmas album at one point. Like, we can't... And this terrible movie, just because the Michael Bay ones weren't great, they're still at least competently made films.
And depending on what version you look at, Splinter is either a rat that watched a human do kung fu and learned ninjutsu that way, or is the actual like old master of ninjutsu who got turned into a rat and sent to New York. Like, dude, this stuff is weird, man. Like, you can't don't ignore it. But yeah, it's the 4th one is. It's the thing that happens, and I think a lot of fans wish it didn't.
TMNT 4. I'm looking it up now. Was it? No, that's not it.
I have personally never seen it and never wanted to track it down or anything like that.
Oh no! Oh, that's funny. If you Google TMNT 4 movie, it immediately takes you to the 2007 movie instead. It's TMNT, the 4th movie. TMNT 2007. It is the 4th and final installment of the original series. They just gloss they just gloss right over that, as they should.
Crazy.
But then,
why would you do that to the 2007 movie? That's so mean.
But let's, Josh, start us off with the 2007, probably the most overlooked Ninja Turtles movie that's actually good.
Yeah, oh, totally. I think a lot of people, it's the first, I want to say CGI animated Turtles movie.
I think so. Unless there was like directed DVD or ones for the TV show.
I think that threw a lot of people because a lot of the older fans were very much like, no, you have to do costumes. It's got to be live action, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. Um, I love what they do with the movie. I mean, so I had the video game on my DS. Like I played the crap out of that thing. I saw this movie in theaters. It's basically it's the same tried old and true TMNT story. Raph is angry, gets separated, causes problems, blah blah blah. Only I love that Raph decides to be a vigilante and like goes off on his own and stuff like that. Like for that way, like super interesting. Basically, at the end of the day, I'm trying to remember. I don't think Shredder is even involved in it, but like there's this guy summoning like
Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, these because he's Ocean Master. But he's one of the guys looks like Ocean Master a little bit. I'm not even gonna lie to you. But basically to summon all of these like old gods of war or something to that effect, and so they just have to go and stop him, and they for some reason have access to the Foot Clan, and it's wild. It's super weird. They dive into the mutant kind of stuff a little bit, but not really. I like it a lot, honestly. I think it's a better representation of, I think, maybe the comics a little bit than maybe the original 90s ones were, and it's a lot of fun. It's a stupid amount of fun.
I think it's the second best one after the original 1990 one. I think my big issue with it is I don't particularly love the villains. I think they're just kind of...
That's fair.
They're not the most interesting. Like Shredder, as soon as he shows up in the 1991, you're like, oh, this dude means business. And he does. I don't think the Turtles ever actually beat Shredder. He just lucked himself into a death. And Casey Jones commits a murder. Clearly.
Attaboy, Casey.
But the 2007 one, I don't think the villains are particularly memorable. They're just all a bunch of stones that come to life. Also, just like random things like, how does Leo not recognize his own brother that's just a big hulking unit of armor? He looks exactly like your brother. Who else is shaped like that?
Yeah, there are some problems, yeah.
Also, I love the fact that Mikey, they actually for once explain how the Turtles pay for their pizza, and Mikey has a job as a children's entertainer, but he just wears a Michelangelo head over his own head.
Yes.
Like, okay.
It's so good.
That's pretty good. My other big criticism of the movie, besides the villain, is normally I don't mind celebrity voice actors, but I think there was too big of names celebrities in this that I only heard the celebrity, not the character. Like when I'm watching the 90s one, I'm going, that's Raph, that's Leo, that's Donnie, that's Mikey. Whereas this, I'm going, that is blatantly Chris Evans. That is blatantly Patrick Stewart. Like, this is a little distracting. It's still good. I think it's got some of the best action of any of the Turtles movies.
Agreed.
It's got a very interesting style. I felt bad because I feel like it really went under the radar, and I think they may have run into an issue of how do we market this, because it is supposed to be a follow-up to those original live-action movies, but I don't think as a kid I understood that, because we had a whole show, the 2000s one that we loved so much. We had already had that as a full show, basically. And so I don't think the advertising did enough to say, hey, this is a continuation of that TV series. And we hadn't gotten stuff like that before. It's more commonplace nowadays. I think had the trailer showed, they'd be like, yes, this is a continuation of the story of the first two Ninja Turtles movies. Nothing else past that. We're completely ignoring the third one. Then I think you definitely would have gotten me in the theater as a diehard Turtles fan, because I didn't see the movie in theaters. So then, fast forward to the Michael Bay era. We gotta set the stage first, because what the movie ended up being versus what I think they're planning on the movie being is two completely separate things, and I think it's blatantly apparent that things were changed in this movie. First of all, despite what Michael Bay will tell you, be like, no, that was always the plan. They were clearly planning on the Turtles being aliens at one point, early in the script process. Michael Bay was like, no, we always wanted them to be mutants. And no, that was something that got leaked and got people all pissed, so they changed it. But no, I firmly believe that they were supposed to be aliens at one point, and that was dumb. I also still maintain, if I had to put on a conspiracy theory tinfoil hat for something, William Fichtner's character was always intended to be the Shredder.
Yes.
And they have some lazy reshoots in the movie to go around it, because in Turtles lore, the Shredder is Oroku Saki. William Fichtner's character's name is Eric Sachs. An Americanized version of Oroku Saki? Interesting. And he's the main villain in this movie until we have like one or two scenes of a dude mysteriously in shadow that we never get to see his face as the actual Shredder. I think he was supposed to be the bad guy. I think that was always the plan. And then late in the game, fans may have heard that like a white dude was playing Shredder. And so they probably ADR'd some dialogue to tweak some things, do some reshoots with the old Asian guy that would never even see his face. Be like, no, we promise that's the actual Shredder, because the story is clearly the Eric Sachs character as the villain, and he has a rivalry with the Turtles, and his story is actually well thought out and interesting, and then the Shredder is just an afterthought. But before we get to the Turtles themselves and the choices that they made, what did you think of the villain for Turtles and just the movie as a whole, besides the Turtle stuff, everything leading up to it and everything else?
It's fine. How do we say this? It's the typical thing with Michael Bay films. They look pretty, but they don't really necessarily make sense. The Shredder is pretty cool looking. I'll give him that.
I hated Shredder. I'll be honest.
See, that's one.
And here's why. It's like everything else with Michael Bay. It's cool, but over designed. Yes, there's like that scene where he's confronting Splinter, and he like does the Wolverine thing where like claws come out. And I'm like, that's cool. And then he does it again. He's like, I got claws on claws. I'm like, okay, that's overkill there, man.
Why? Why do you need that? Yeah. And what's interesting too is that and maybe my memory is what it is, but I kind of swore that Eric Sachs is like a whole character in the comics and other shows, but like he's never the Shredder, but like he's an actual character that's completely separated. So to me, that was also going to be kind of crazy. I didn't hate it as much as I think maybe some other people did. I agree with your theories, and I think that it would be hard to see the movie and not think those things. I think even in when I think I saw this in the theaters, I think, but even I was like, why does Shredder seem like an afterthought in this? Like, that's a little odd. Yeah, making our main, like, the villain of the Turtles be kind of an afterthought seems like a weird choice. But yeah, no, it's fine. It's at least better than Turtles 2 and 3. I would think anyway.
That is true. I don't love the movie, but I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. And I think that comes down to the Turtles themselves, which are an incredibly mixed bag. I love their personalities and how they're interacting with each other. I think, like the original movie, I think the voice cast is really well done. I don't hear the actors playing them. I hear the characters, which, I mean, full credit to Johnny Knoxville as Leo. Yeah. I think he doesn't get the credit he deserves. He's a very good Leo, actually.
I have a vivid memory of like the whole community being like, really, Johnny Knoxville? Been like, that was like the least of our problems. He was actually pretty good.
Yeah, he was quite good. I will say their personalities and everything was great. The Turtles themselves are over designed. I remember getting into a debate with somebody in college. I was just like, I hate what they did with Donnie. He literally is head to toe in gadgets, but everybody else is too. Like, Mikey's got a whole bunch of stuff. Like, I don't mind it so much for this new one that Donnie's got stuff on him, because he's the only one that's got stuff on him, and he has significantly less stuff. Like, Donnie in the Michael Bay one
makes sense.
Yeah, but like Donnie in the Ninja Turtle in Michael Bay's one which I know Michael Bay didn't direct either movie, but we just call them the Michael Bay movies. He's like overly designed. Like he's got stuff on his wrists, both wrists. It's his belt is like completely decked out in gear, but everyone else was over designed. I'm just going, this is ridiculous. And I also felt like the turtles were a little too tanky. Like, here, let me just get shot by a Humvee and I'm totally fine. Whereas
they're big. They're really big.
They're beasts. And also, like, I don't feel like they're ever in danger. Like, I remember, was it Leo or Raph in the comic that gets their shell cracked? And you feel like that's a big deal.
Raph.
Like that, you feel like that's a big deal. Like they're actually vulnerable. Whereas in the Michael Bay one, I'm just like, y'all are just Transformers. You're indestructible. There's nothing bad that can happen to you. Much has been made about Megan Fox's April O'Neil. I think she is as good as the material she is given, which is not very good.
Yeah.
Also,
I would not blame her on that one.
Yeah, I don't blame her for this movie at all. I do blame Will Arnett, though. God, he's awful in this movie. Like, I hate his character so much. It just feels like a Michael Bay insert of like, hey, we know Megan Fox is hot. Let's just harass her the entire movie. It's just awful. The Shredder fight was whatever. But, and here's where we get into the controversial opinions. Let's get into the much better Ninja Turtles movie of the two of them. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Out of the Shadows. They still get some things wrong here. But I think, to their credit, they took fan feedback from the previous movie and applied it to this movie. My big criticism, Josh and I have had this discussion many times, and I think Josh has a bigger issue with than I do, but God, Stephen Amell was miscast as Casey Jones.
It's so bad. He's just not even entertaining. That's the thing. Like at least like Casey in the 90s, like he doesn't quote unquote do much for the movie, but he's an interesting person and he's an interesting character that kind of want to have him around just to see how he interacts with everybody. Whereas Stephen Amell's Casey, he just feels like Oliver Queen like was universe jumping and decided to be somebody else for a little bit. Like, he's just bland. He is the Wonder Bread of the entire movie. He's just there, and it almost makes me more mad that he's so bland out of literally everything else in both of those Michael Bay movies, because it is such a missed opportunity, and it's one of those things that like Casey is pretty integral to this franchise, and to just make him even more uninteresting than Megan Fox's April O'Neil is kind of like horrifying.
And he only wears the hockey mask once, and the hockey mask not even right for that. It's whatever. He's like, I'm Stephen Amell. I gotta show my face.
Yes.
But that aside, the rest of the movie, I think, is cast pretty well. We actually have a legit Shredder this time around with, I believe the actor's name was Brian T. Doesn't do much, but he looks like, okay, this is the Shredder we should have got the first time. An actual human being, not in a mechanized suit. Granted, Krang kind of wastes him pretty early on that we don't actually get any Shredderness. But the fact that they went balls to the wall and actually had Krang and the Technodrome in there, going, okay, I applaud you for it. To me, the MVPs of Out of the Shadows, though, has to be Rocksteady and Bebop. I was so surprised by how good Seamus was. Both of them together, my man. Like, they were actually good. And I know some people had some criticism with the tone. They're just like, it's too dumb and childish. Y'all. Y'all, you are watching a movie called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. Did you want this to be a serious endeavor? Bebop and Rocksteady, I think, were great adaptations of the original characters. And another thing I think was a good adaptation that I think people get mad about, I didn't have an issue with Tyler Perry's Baxter Stockman.
Oh, same.
I think he's great. I think he knew exactly what type of movie he was in and just went for it. Tyler Perry, when he wants to be, like in Gone Girl, can be a good actor, but I think he knew what they were going for in this movie. It was just going, yeah, I'm down to make a fool of myself. Like, he is blatantly aware that Baxter Stockman originally was just kind of the butt of the joke. He just got trampled on by everybody. So I didn't mind his Baxter Stockman. I feel like the second one, Out of the Shadows, was closer to an adaptation of the original 80s cartoon than it was an adaptation of the 90 movie. And for some people, it didn't work. For me, it didn't entirely work, but it was closer to the Turtles that I would prefer to see on screen than the other movie. So while it's not perfect, I wanted to give them credit for going, okay, you clearly did learn from your mistakes in the last movie and made a concerted effort to, honestly, if we're going based off the 80s cartoon, you made one of the most faithful adaptations you could have made. You just didn't make a great movie around it, but I don't know how good of a movie you could have made if you're basing it off of the 80s one, as much as some people are going to hate me for saying that. Also, because I forgot to mention in the first one, the best thing about that first one is the elevator scene by a wide margin.
And I think there's more of that kind of vibe in the second one.
Agreed.
My biggest issue is that so much of the movie takes place during the day. Very rarely does it take place at night. And I get that is because of the whole, like, hey, we want to come out of the shadows. We want to be at the forefront, blah, 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 which is not a thing that the Turtles really need to do. Like, they're ninjas. Why would ninjas want to get recognized for that? That doesn't make sense. I think the biggest thing that the second movie does that is actually really, really interesting, and I wish they spent more time on it in the film, is the idea that Stockman's formula could turn them human. And like they deal with it like maybe 2-minute scene. And it's all around Donnie. And like to Donnie's credit, he does a very, very good job of making it interesting. I just wish it was a bigger part of the movie, because while we want to be out in the shadows, we don't want to be afraid anymore. You keep growing the way you are, you're not going to fit in the sewers anymore, because you're way too stinking big. But the whole little side plot of like them potentially being able to be human instead of turtles I wish had a bigger part in that movie, because it makes it so much more interesting, I think, than like, well, we want credit for our deeds. You know what I mean? It's fine. It's that snowboarding, the avalanche scene is super cool.
Oh, for the first one?
Yeah, and that's what I'll give them credit for it. For the action in both two is, for the most part, pretty good. I think it's probably some of the best action that we've seen in a Turtles movie so far. Kind of depending on what you're into.
I also go with the 90s one just because I like the hand-to-hand combat, the actual ninja aspect, as opposed to the one brute force of the Michael Bay ones of just, we're going to be powerhouses. Also, I believe the 90s one being the ninja aspect more than the we're literally the size of a truck. How are we going to hide? But then again, I guess you can make the case of, how did they hide in April's apartment? They found ways, people. They found ways. So did,
it was great.
Production crews that are hiding behind tables and whatnot.
But like, there's also like the Nickelodeon show just had they did a movie recently, not theatrical release or anything like that, and it's like, if you are into the TMNT and also B into anime, it's so close to a perfect movie. What you've got to gasp. What you got?
I wasn't going to talk about this primarily because I forgot about it, but this new Ninja Turtles movie isn't the last time we've seen the Turtles recently, as you talk about an animated feature.
Yeah.
Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, man.
Oh my gosh, yes. That is like one of the most perfect on-screen iterations of TMNT.
It really is.
No notes whatsoever.
Honestly, like, I'm watching this as a huge Batman, but also as a huge Ninja Turtles fan when this movie came out, and my jaw was on the floor by how much of the details they get right. So like, when Batman fights Shredder for the first time, Shredder drops down and he drops down like a slow, like super slow motion, and he like bobs back up. I'm just going, as someone that has rewatched the original DVD ad nauseum as a kid growing up, you did that perfectly. That's exactly how Shredder was introduced in the final fight in the first Ninja Turtles, where he comes down to the slow boom, and then like certain lines of dialogue, them going, that's a thing, or how characters are presented. Batman versus the Ninja Turtles was better than it had any right to be. And this is coming from someone that has read the crossover comic. The comic's good. I think they made appropriate tweaks where it fits. Although I'm still questioning why Joker turned into a cobra and not a hyena. I'm still mad about that. That makes no sense to me. And no, it's not because of my pathological fear of snakes. You're the one that's afraid of snakes here.
But I mean, it does make sense that Harley turns into a hyena. Like, I like that. But
they should have been conjoined hyenas. We already had a conjoined thing though with with whatever Two-Face turned into.
So I agree that he shouldn't have been a snake, but I'm not 100% sure what else you turn him into, because at the end of the day, he is very terrifying as a cobra snake. But like, I don't know, hyena. If you're gonna make Harley the hyena, okay, cool. But if you make Joker the hyena, what do you make Harley then? Like, you know what I mean? So I don't like the idea of them being both hyenas, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know what other choice that you have there.
I just appreciate that Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles somehow made Batman believably exist with the Ninja Turtles, but never devaluing either one. Like, At the end, again, mild spoiler alert for people that haven't seen this animated movie that's a couple years old now, when it's just Batman, and all of a sudden he goes, "Cowabunga." It doesn't feel dumb for Batman, because the way that they built it up, it makes sense that that's the code word for the Turtles. I'll also still lose it of Batman's driving with Michelangelo. "Don't press the button." And then at the end, "Michelangelo, yes?
Yeah.
Push all the buttons." "All of them?" "All the buttons." And he just starts going to town on it. And then you cut over to Damien. "Oh, I always wanted to push all the buttons." And you're just like, well, Damien, maybe if you weren't such a little douche canoe, maybe you would actually be loved for once.
At that point, Damien was like that. To me, I think that was like one of the turning points for us, is as people that like for Damien anyway, of like, okay, he's not terrible, because like before that we had like what, Son of Batman and
Batman versus Robin.
Like, yeah, like those two, and he's awful. He's not likable. He's not interesting. Like it. But yeah, it's. And
then you get like Donnie and Batgirl paired together, and she's just like, "And we get the serum here, ooze." "Yeah, I'm not calling it that." And I'm just going, "Thank you." Great line in the trailer for Mutant Mayhem. It was like, "We prefer ooze." It just rolls off the tongue better. Ooze. I watched it like 4 or 5 times, just like watching that specific section and watching each of them interact like differently with it and interact with each other, and like, it's so good. Yeah, I'm changing my mind. Actually, no, the 90s one is probably still my favorite Ninja Turtles movie, and then second is Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It just does justice to both characters, and I'm still mad that we have not gotten a sequel to that. But maybe it's just complicated because it's 2 separate studios with Warner Brothers and then Nickelodeon, which I don't say this very often about like big studios and whatnot, but I think Nickelodeon has always been a good shepherd for the Ninja Turtles brand. I think they've handled that property incredibly well. It's not something people point out very often, but I think they've utilized it well. They've exposed it enough, but not overexposed it, which, you know, has been the case with Turtles before. Heaven forbid we just slap Ninja Turtles on literally anything. But they always have some form of a show going on, but they take the time to make it sure it's a good show. They don't just put minimum effort into it. I think Nickelodeon understands the property that they have with Turtles, and they've done a good job with it. Makes me very excited for Mutant Mayhem.
Agreed. I think all of this leading up to just based off of this little teaser that we have for the Mutant Mayhem, I honestly feel that like this could be the best Turtles movie ever made, up to this point at least. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see what we get from the what did he say, the eternal teenager Seth Rogen, which I loved. As soon as that, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. Let's go.
The moment I was hooked was when Mikey's throwing, when Raph is throwing the shuriken at Mikey's head. I'm just as an older adult, I'm just going, that is incredibly dangerous. But at the child of heart going, do it. That might hit him. Do it.
Yeah.
Just like, it's so stupid,
Donnie,
but it's a teenager thing to do.
Like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
He's going to die.
Like, it's so good. And, like,
but then it's perfect because you see Leo in the background being super anxious about everything. But as soon as someone's in danger, he leaps forward to take care of him going,
so good. And like,
perfect.
Mikey being like, why did we pick a fruit that's shaped like my head? Like,
don't ask questions.
You're going to break my concentration. So good. I'm super excited for it.
Well, what do you guys think? Should we do more discussions like this in the future of just focusing on one specific thing and really hone in on it? Let us know. Were you a big Ninja Turtles fan? Have you never been a big Ninja Turtles fan? Either way, let us know your Ninja Turtles story down in the comments below. I always like hearing from you guys. And as always, if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, or subscribe to us on YouTube at Uncharted Media. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals, or in this case, cowabunga.